Hi, I'm Peter Barron, and welcome to today's Western Boarding Schools Association videocast. I'm joined by Tom Shepard, who is the Director of Admission at Stevenson School, which is both in Pebble Beach, California and Carmel, California. They offer grades pre-K through 12 with the boarding high school starting in 9th grade. And welcome to the videocast, Tom.
Thanks. Nice to be here. Absolutely.
So, as a director of admission, I imagine you get this question all the time, and you probably have this conversation all the time. But, if you were sitting down with a family, what are three things right off the bat they should know about Stevenson?
Yeah, I think that's kind of, at the heart of it all, once you get through some of the superficial questions and you get down to the understanding the core, the essence of a school. I think, really successful schools have one thing in common, and that is defining characteristics that are carried throughout the whole school. And that's one of the things I love about working here is whether you agree or disagree, the school is well defined. And we come back to a number of things, but three of them stand out. The first two being, I guess, programmatic, philosophical, and the last being more environmental in nature. And what struck me when I first came here was being a larger school with 750 kids, this is a pretty complicated place, and I couldn't pigeonhole Stevenson. I couldn't figure it out. And then I finally realized that after talking to enough people that one of the really unique qualities of the school is the fact that, I kind of put it this way, we spend a lot of time in our culture talking about being well-rounded. And at Stevenson, we take a very different tack here. We say to the kids, we don't want you to be well-rounded. We want you to be, as we put it, angular and passionate. Angular being unique, and passionate in the sense of we want your education to help you develop lifelong passions that fuel your education. I'll give you an example. I had a girl graduate a couple years ago named Freya. Freya was a real character. In the 60s, she might have been a hippie. She really had long, flowing blonde hair. She had really strong passions. She loved the environment. She was a big part of our outdoor program. And she loved writing. She was a prolific writer. And I remember I asked her, she was one of my tour guides, I asked her senior year, I said, where are you going to college? She said, I'm going to the University of Montana. And she said it with such great gusto. And I kind of stopped and thought, wow, that sounds like a great school. I don't know if you ever sent anybody there before. And I didn't know why she was going there. And I said, why University of Montana, Freya? She said, oh, it's very simple. The college counseling office helped me see they have the best environmental writing program in the country. I said, there you go.
Right.
And that, to me, embodied the spirit of being angular and passionate. Coincides with the idea of the students who really love Stevenson are ones who come here to meet people who are different than they are.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, if you want to go to school where everybody's exactly the same as you, where they aspire to be the same, dress the same, act the same, you'll hate it here. But if you genuinely like that adventurous spirit, you'll really appreciate being around people who are different than you.
Yeah. Is that a common thread that you see with your alums that coming out of the school that they kind of have that passionate focus as they go off to their next stop?
Yeah, to us, it's the key to everything. It's the key to driving what universities we're going to help them look at. It's more fundamentally the key to, the term we use here is a joyful life. That's a very concise phrase that all of our kids know because it's at the core of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
The way I put it to 8th graders when I'm meeting them or talking with them is that, a lot of times teenage life revolves around what I call an axis of cool. In other words, in any teenage culture, there's a definition and axis of what is cool and therefore what is not. And if you fit that axis, you're in good shape. If you don't, you kind of float around the outside and make do as best you can. Here at Stevenson, what I love about school, there's no axis of cool. Whatever you are doing, whatever you're passionate about, and whatever you're appreciating that others are doing, that's cool.
Yeah.
And that it's a kind of a nuance. It's hard to quantify and hard to define, but when you see it, and you see kids who otherwise might not be appreciated for who they are, really being valued, it's a special part of the community.
How does it resonate? I mean, how do you get that message across to your prospective kids? I mean, 8th grade, they're still fairly young. I mean, what is it that clicks with them?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, when I go talk to eighth graders and I do presentations, I love talking to eighth graders as a class because they're a challenging audience, but they're really, I don't think we give them enough credit.
Mm.
Some people say, oh, you can't talk to an eighth grader about these concepts. They won't get them. They're too detached, too remote. And I find out, time and again, that's just not the case. They really get it. When you talk to them about, hey, I love playing violin, and I love being smart, I love working hard, and I don't want to be ashamed of it. They understand that because in many cases they're actually going through the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. And they're looking for an environment where they really can be appreciated. You can just see it in their eyes when you're talking to them. They open up. It's amazing.
So we're learning now that Stevenson gives you a place to discover your passions and really develop them and nurture them. What other things should we know about Stevenson?
Yeah, that's really the first piece. The second piece to all of this, and what defines the school, is a basic philosophy of encouraging kids to become, as we put it, independent-minded and self-reliant. And sometimes that's a really scary concept for parents, especially of eighth graders, because what they want to hear, or they think they want to hear, is that my child's going to be coddled, supported, loved, because the idea of boarding is unnatural at first, and they have to be educated. Mm-hmm. And when they hear that, in fact, their child is going to be encouraged to become independent-minded and self-reliant, and that we're not going to coddle them every step of the way, that's tough on them. But we talk to them about simple things here. For example, the kids all know this phrase. We say to the kids, you are responsible for your education, and nobody else is going to take on that responsibility. And the example we give them right out of the box is, at Stevenson, you'll never hear a school bell of any kind. We say to the kids, you have a watch, you have a schedule. You're on a campus with over 530 students in grades 9 through 12, and you got to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And after a while, they begin to realize how empowering that is, mm-hmm. that they are responsible to take care of themselves. Now, we're here to love them, support them, and care for them. But what ends up happening is, by the time they graduate, they're going off to universities empowered to take control of their lives. And being the parent of two young children myself, and being the helicopter parent, I know how hard this is for parents, because they're used to being there and helping their kids and picking them up when they fall down and things like that. So at times, it actually creates a little bit of tension and manipulation with our parents. But when they see the end result, and they realize how well prepared their kid is for a university in a way you can't measure on a test, the satisfaction is unbelievable.
Do you get that kind of feedback regularly? I'm just going to say, did you get that kind of feedback regularly from parents of graduated kids?
Sure. You can see it time and again. It's an evolution in their thinking. Yeah. The letting go in 9th grade and 10th grade is really hard. The buying into our philosophy is something that is unnatural for them. But in a way, when they're able to do it and let go, they realize how good it is for their child and for them. Yeah. It makes all the difference in the world.
So what's that last point that we should know about Stevenson?
Well, it's interesting. I get the good fortune of traveling the world in my job. And I go to a lot of beautiful places. And I have no doubt about it, having grown up in Hawaii myself, there are lots of beautiful places out there. But there are very few places that I would define as uniquely beautiful and breathtaking. And the environment and the setting here in Pebble Beach is one that isn't replicated anywhere else in the world. This is really, we live in the middle of a forest that happens to be right next to the Pacific Ocean. It's an extremely serene, peaceful place where, for example, the strangest things happen in terms of weather. The temperature is basically the same all year long. The fog rolls in and out of the forest in ways that you never see anywhere else. The smell of the trees, the bark of the seals, the deer across the campus. It's one of these things that we just had alumni weekend a few weeks ago, and the alumni all come back and say the same thing. I've forgotten how impactful the environment was and how it contributed and I think supported this concept of helping kids create a joyful life. Yeah. When you're here, you focus on your studies and your growth and do it in a very serene setting. And right outside of Pebble Beach, there are all the resources of the small city of Monterey and Carmel and outdoor opportunities. But the kids all remember it. And I'll never forget last year at the end of the year, I asked one of our graduates actually from Shanghai. I said to her, what are you going to remember the most about Stevenson? And of all the things she could have said to me, she pointed up and she said, the stars. I stood back and said, the stars? And she said, yeah, for 4 years, I've looked up at the stars every night. Because at home, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it made me realize the little things we take for granted. I said, wow, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, I imagine that the 4 years they spent on Stevenson's campus may be, the nicest environment that they're in for the rest of their lives.
It is, and it's a double-edged sword on the one hand because it's not reality, and we know that.
Sure.
So our job is to make sure the kids are exposed to a variety of influences that keep them grounded. And it all ties together in the sense that our culture here is one that this concept of being joyful and being successful and passionate does not necessarily coincide with being cutthroat. Our kids are successful because they're creative, they're kind, they have a humane side. They do very well for themselves, but not at somebody else's expense. And that's apparent to visitors when they come here for the first time.
Well, that's a great point to segue into our final words here. If somebody wants to learn more about these opportunities, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Fortunately today with technologies being what they are, and schools realizing that the opportunities to create genuine messaging being so great, our response is always the same. We want to put you in contact one-on-one with our kids and then just get out of the way. And try to do that in a variety of ways. If they contact us here in the office and say, hey, I want to learn more about the school, sure, we'll send them all the materials and things like that, and we're really proud of them. But to get right to the core, to the essence of what it's all about, we want to say to them, if you'd like to talk with our kids, with our parents, let us know, and we'll set that up and just leave you alone.
Yeah, and I imagine there's no better way to get to know the school than to come on campus.
Absolutely, and I'd say that's true of any good school search process. Is you got to smell it, you got to feel it, you got to breathe it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking some time here, and I wish you the best of luck with the upcoming year.
Thanks, Peter. Hope you guys have a great year too.